I think the headline of this trading deadline for the Pistons is Dennis Schroder.
Most
Now,
definitely.
he was a player that I was looking at when he was in Brooklyn because I knew Brooklyn wanted to be in the Cooper Flag sweepstakes.
They
And
are
they've
playing
made,
capture the flag 100%.
yeah, 100%, waving the white flag for Cooper Flag. Um, it, I think a lot of teams definitely will start tanking pretty soon. Um,
Yeah.
what are your thoughts on a player like a Dennis Schroeder, and how do you think he'll help this second unit for the rest of the season?
Dennis Schroeder's a really good basketball player. And the reason why he's really only been moved a lot of times as much as he has is because he's been in situations that aren't really looking to win. And then he's like, wait, he's winning too many games. What's going on? And then he suddenly gets moved. And so, I don't think Golden State was really a great fit for him either, just schematically and just, what they do out there. So for them again to not really have to give up anything and to bring in someone who is a lot of experience in big game situations, both in the NBA and in World Cup and Olympic basketball as well. I just think that he is the perfect plug gap guy for an Ivy, where he's able to replicate a good amount of that offense from a scoring standpoint. He runs your offense. He gives you, like, he's not incompetent on the defensive end. He gives you an able body when it comes to that as well. And you have the flexibility of, if you want to keep him as a backup point guard going forward, like obviously you could re-sign him if you wanted to, but also if it doesn't necessarily work out, he's an expiring contract as well. So I heard rumblings that it was going to be heading towards that direction, kind of like a little bit before an hour before the deadline ended. I was just curious as to what they would have had to give up. And again, it wasn't really anything other than just the cap space that they had. So, for what this team was looking to do at this deadline and for what they're looking to do at this, like, at the end of this season, I think it's a great pickup.
Yeah, same here. He was like kind of like on my tier list. Like I had like Alonzo Ball, Malcolm Brogdon, Dennis Schroeder. Like those are the type of point guards I was looking at, obviously. And the one thing with him that I think a lot of Pistons fans will like is his ability to score at all three levels. His ability not only to lead the second unit, but in certain situations, crunch time situations, he could play next to Cade at shooting guard,
Yep.
and be that secondary ball handler. I know Trajan was asked that by the media yesterday, and he's like, it's more of a JB question, but no doubt in my mind, those two could play next to each other. And I was thinking to myself, like, this is probably the best, backup point guard Kate Cunningham and this young Detroit Pistons core has ever played with.
Yep.
No shot at Corey Joseph, but like there's levels, and I think Dennis Schroeder at the end of the day could be a guy that could easily get you 10, 12 points off the bench, leading the second unit with Malik Beasley. I think his assists are going to go through the roof. Someone had mentioned that Dennis and Malik played together when they were in LA. So, I mean, I feel like Malik is really going to love like reconnecting with Dennis. And I think Dennis is just going to like the opportunity to play for an organization that's not going to say like, hey, man, we're good. Bye.
Right.
Trajan mentioned like, hey, like if everything works out and like he plays well, like we can have conversations about possibly bringing him back this summer.
Yeah, and that's really the thing, is he's just been in so many, different situations where he's been asked to do so many different things. And I think coming to Detroit, where it's a scheme that fits his strengths, playing a lot more of like a pick and roll centric offense, and being able to be the initiator in that, I think he's going to really enjoy throwing lobs to Jalen Duren. I think he's going to enjoy a lot of the spacing, that there is in Detroit. But I also think, he's going to enjoy playing alongside a Cade. Not like, no shot to like a Steph Curry, but Steph is a very particular player where a very particular offense is ran. Whereas Cade is kind of, that Swiss Army knife, helps guys, get better around him, and so I think for Schroeder, I think he's set up to succeed in this system. So I think it's, again, just once it became apparent that Lonzo Ball was not going to be available, I think that was the best possible redirect they could have made.
Yeah, and like what they got for him, obviously you reroute KJ Martin,
Yep.
which I kind of feel bad for,
Right.
especially after his dad kind of like went on a podcast and saying like, he's always involved in these trades. He thought he was going to stay in Philly, be a piece, but obviously that's not the case. Who knows what happens in Utah? But I mean, you didn't really have to give up anything to get him. I think you gave up 1 second that you got in that Philly deal anyway. So it's like
Yep.
win-win situation. And I think Cade Cunningham is definitely going to benefit the most with Dennis Schroder
Oh
because
yeah.
he'll be able to get rest now. He's not going to have to play 38, 39, 40 minutes because you don't have a secondary ball handler or a backup point guard on this team.
And he's someone that you have to respect if you're, if you're playing defense, especially, he's someone that can shoot it from beyond the arc. He's someone that if you don't respect him, he can still blow by you at times as well. Like he's 31, but he still has a lot of his athleticism. I mean, honestly, he reminds me, quite a bit. And obviously he replaced Reggie Jackson in Oklahoma City, as like that backup point guard role. He reminds me a lot of Reggie Jackson in those aspects. Whereas instead of having to be asked to be the number one guy, offensively like he was when Reggie was in Detroit. Schroeder fits into a role that's a lot better suited, for him. And again, like just is not going to be asked to do anything other than just be who he's been his entire career, especially when he's been more successful. So, in my opinion, I think we're going to see closer to Brooklyn Schroeder than we did Golden State Schroeder because I just think that Golden State is a ecosystem that is very high pressure, high expectations, and again, just wasn't necessarily a great fit basketball wise for him. Whereas Detroit, I think it's a perfect fit.
And JB feels like a coach where he's just going to say, hey, play your game and let the rest come to you. Kind of like how he's done with Malik. Like, hey, shoot 15 threes. We don't care. We need the scoring. I feel like JB is going to love to have a guy like that, the luxury of having a backup point guard that he can rely on for a good 10 to 20 minutes a night. And you
Yep.
don't have to exhaust Cade. And, Cade can have a little bit fresher legs. Maybe he can get a good 7, 8 minutes rest on the bench while Dennis is out there. So
Mm-hmm.
definitely a big win for Trajan, I would say, at this deadline without giving up anything. You kept the core intact. You kept the locker room good. You're adding two high quality character guys, like he had mentioned at the presser. I was very pleased because he actually said what he was going to do.
Yep.
And we've got a lot of lip service from previous regimes of saying like how they want to be a defensive team. They want to win games. They want to restore the bad boys. Like I think Trajan is doing exactly what he said all the way back in the introductory press conference this July.
Him and his team are very detail oriented and like I think the thing is like even though he said in the press conference yesterday that the playoffs didn't even enter his mind, the thing is that he had scenarios and plans for whatever situation that this team was in. And for guys like Michael Blackstone and and Trajan to not only like manipulate the salary cap and just the assets and the pieces that they have, but also just to keep this roster competitive and keep it afloat despite all the different things that it's going through. I just yeah, you can't say enough to what he and the coaching staff have done as far as coming in with a plan with with and made promises that they have very much kept.
Yeah, it's kind of weird to see because I haven't seen a competent front office probably since I was like 12 years old when Joe Dumars first got the job and he was going out and getting players like a Rip Hamilton, which everyone was pissed because they traded Jerry Stackhouse, who was like averaging 30 a game. Uh, you know, Trading Grant Hill for like Ben Wallace and Chucky Atkins. Like when I was a kid, man, like people were like legitimately like steamed. Like we just gave
Yep.
up our franchise player for a guy that's been just tossed around. But like, hey, you never really know. Change of scenery. So it'll be really interesting to see like how this young core develops and how this front office attacks, future free agencies, trade deadlines, and I was pretty pleased with it.